Step under the juniper tree, where we engage in captivating conversations with your favorite faith leaders. Together, we'll unravel the enthralling mysteries of where the threads of the human experience intertwine with the fabric of faith, mental health, and leadership. Join us for an exhilarating journey of discovery and connection as we explore the beautiful intersections between the faith and the human experience under the juniper tree. Hey, welcome to the Juniper Tree. This is Coach Shamar. I am excited about what we're going to talk about today. We have a very, very special guest who is going to enlighten us and share his story with us. Before we kind of jump in, I want to just kind of give some background to what we're going to talk about because this story is a little different. I was at active shooter training at church because we were looking at Sandy Hook and looking at all the things that have happened in this world. And we were talking about what does our plan look like at church to, what would we do if someone was to come in here and we had an active shooter moment. And I had this plan in my head of where I was going to go, where I was going to jump, what I was going to jump behind. And then after that was over, I went home, and a couple of days later, maybe 2 days later or so, there was a story that I found, or rather this story found me. It found me on my timeline. And the story was, as a pastor, I would say it was every pastor's worst nightmare. You want to keep your congregation safe. You want to look after them. You want to care for them. I mean, part of why we're here is God and them. And this moment of a shooter walking in. It's scary. It's scary. Let me play the video for you that I saw on my timeline so you can see what I saw.
And God had chose.
Jesus.
Wow. So all I can say is wow when I watch that all over again. Today, our special guest, he is the pastor of Jesus Dwelling Place Church. He is a faith leader. He's a pastor. He is a man of God. He's a father, a husband. And he's also the man who's been thrust into the spotlight since this event has happened. He's also the man in the green shirt that you see in this video. I want to introduce to you Pastor Glenn Germany. How are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you, Coach Shamar. It's just a blessing to have this opportunity.
Yeah, it's a blessing to have you here. I mean, I know it's been quite a whirlwind for you as well since this has happened.
Yeah, it's been life-changing, but it's been life-changing in a good way.
I hear that. You know, when we just played that video, I know you've probably seen it quite a few times from your live stream and all over the internet. You know, when you saw it, what were you feeling? What were you feeling as you saw it again?
To be honest with you, I still ain't feeling. Even at this point, weeks after the fact, I'm still ain't feeling. I know in the midst of it, I wasn't processing or what I mean by that. Like everything was just a reaction. It wasn't like I really had thoughts coming in and think to do this or think to do that. It was just I was just reacting. Just how I would naturally react. And even looking at it because of how fast it happened, and because of I'm just running 100 miles an hour now. Doing different interviews and podcasts and in studio and talk shows. I really haven't processed it. When I look at it, I'm like, that happened, but I haven't processed it yet.
Yeah, I can imagine. What I hear is the adrenaline was flowing in that moment, and in a way, the adrenaline is still flowing, just in a different moment, in a different way. because you're doing different things now than being in that moment. Yeah.
Yes.
When I looked at it. I know you said in the moment he smiled at you.
Mhm.
What were you thinking in the moment when he smiled at you?
When I seen him and he smiled at me, it didn't catch me off guard or make me unbalanced. It was just his smile was just, you're about to stand up and preach, and you look at the congregation, and I glanced over at him, and I seen the smile that he gave, and it was, it wasn't alarming or anything like that, but it just made me at ease, as if he was glad to be there.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. I, we both stepped on that podium, hundreds of times, right? Hundreds, if not more. And you never expect something like this to happen. I mean, we can train. You can train for anything, but you don't always expect, the training that you have to step in. I mean, how did you train for this moment? Was there any training at all?
Well, more than training, and I believe the Lord's been prepping me all my life for a moment like this,
Yeah,
and I just, I truly believe, even when we've been studying, or, at the time we were studying the book of Peter, and it teaches about going through various trials and tribulations and understanding, that it's working and it's perfecting your faith. So I believe the Lord, he knew that we would be able to handle it as he had promised. He never put more on us than what we can handle. And
yeah,
we had a chance to be tested. Our faith had a chance to be tested. And I thank God that we showed that we were God worthy, meaning that the life of Christ was working through us.
yeah. Speaking of never putting more on you than you can bear, there's a brother in this video, who, I mean, he's a hero here. I've been a deacon before. I know the grind of a deacon. I know, the deacons get it in. They do the work that, I mean, they're dust kickers, right? According to the word, they do the work that not everybody wants to do all the time. And there's this deacon at your church who said I read he was a fan of wrestling. Deacon Clarence. Deacon Clarence, tell me about your relationship with Deacon Clarence.
We have a great relationship. He's actually a pillar within our church. He's the type of guy. One time, my van broke down. I was on just getting off the freeway, and so I'm on the side of the road. My van broke down. I called him. He came in less than 12. He came faster than the police came. He came in less than 12 minutes. Came in, jacked up my van and changed the tire right there and fixed the flat right there on the spot and got me on my way. And that's just the type of person he is. They've been pillars in our church, for like 9, 10 years now, and I'm so grateful to have him and his wife. I always have to mention his wife because his wife is a beautiful person as well. But they're pillars in our church, and they're really supportive. And we were just, it's just amazing because we were just asked to, I was spoke with my brother and my wife, and I said, we have to do something for them to show them how much we appreciate them. We had new appreciation day for them. And this happened. Because he's really getting the spotlight that he really deserved. I could not show no greater appreciation than what's being given to him now. And I'm so grateful for him, and I'm grateful for all the appreciation that he's getting.
Yeah, he was the guy who originally grabbed the gunman and kind of wrestled him down to the ground and put the gun in a place where he could the gunman was not able to put the gun back towards you, right? That's Deacon
Well, no,
Clarence.
no, 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 no. And I don't mean to say no. Or first of all, Deacon Clarence, just to throw this in there, he's 63. So when he hurdled over the railing, it's like, wow, that's nothing but the power guy. He's 63 years old. But when he grabbed the guy, if you notice in the video, the approach I kind of take like my mic was kind of tangled, and I reached for my mic to try to untangle it as I was going over. But I took an approach at an angle of like I went like in a circle around because the way he was holding him, the gun was still pointed at me, and I was afraid that
Wow.
the guy can pull the trigger still because the gun was still pointed at me. And so I took a roundabout way to get over to help him, so I didn't just go directly to a pointed gun that was still pointed at me.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw you kind of slide in, kind
Yeah,
of creep
yeah,
around in
yeah,
the moment. Yeah.
yeah.
Man, that is,
It was the gun was still pointed at me at that moment. He
yeah.
subdued the guy and he helped the guy to where the guy couldn't shoot no one else, but it was still pointed at me.
Man, this is just this in and of itself, just the moments are so wild. I mean, at 63, he's jumping over something. I know my dad is in his 70s. and he's, he works out and stuff like that. But at 63, the power of God, just the Holy Spirit inside of you, and a little bit of adrenaline in the moment, had him hop over. How long has he been at the church?
He's been there for 9 or 10 years. Him and his wife. He does everything that he can for the church. He helps out in any way you call him. He's always available. It's just amazing, and he works a full-time job too.
It's phenomenal. Yeah, just a pillar.
Yeah.
I mean, he sounds like he's close, like family.
Yes, we are. Our whole church is close like family. Everyone. The thing that I love about our church the most is everyone has a relationship with everyone, and so it's just not my relationship with them, but they all have relationships with each other.
Yeah. And I know you and I spoke before our conversation today. I know family is important to you. Even when we spoke, you were talking about how you were hanging out with your daughters and spending some time with them. Um, with talking about your daughters and talking about family, tell me about your relationship with your daughters and how this is kind of, I don't want to say affected them, but maybe showed up and brought you guys closer.
It really did, and this I never pulled through any interview, and I'm praying that this be the first interview I pull through without crying every time I think about when the event happened, and my daughter, I had to watch her process it, and so I had to take her home by myself, it's just me and my daughter, so I can hear where she was and see how she was processing what happened. And I took this moment, as I watched her break down. It really breaks me down every time I think about the way that she broke down in the car.
Yeah.
And wow. She just, I took it as an opportunity to, when I seen her, I just said, sweetheart, this is the reason why I serve God. You had a chance to actually see, I mean, how he provides for us, everything that he has done for us, and how he continues to bless us. But now you got a chance to see how he protects us, and let this be the reason that you understand why I serve him, and why I can trust him, and so I use it as a moment to witness to my younger daughter. And then later I got a call from my older daughter, and she just broke down. And it was just a time of witnessing, but it even made me think of making sure I'm spending more time with them and giving my children the time that they deserve, as well as my grandchildren.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have two daughters, or how many daughters do you have?
I have 4 daughters.
Four
Two
daughters.
out of
Wow.
2 older ones and 2 still in high school. The 2 younger in high school.
Got you. So this is a moment that has affected not just you, but your daughters and them kind of coming to the, like, what was their epiphany through this experience?
I'm still watching them process through it, grow through it. I'm kind of light on questioning them about it. If they bring it up, we go at it. If they don't, I stay away from it. I just try to just see where they are. And I know, I mean, the love that there is, and it's the funniest thing. It's my oldest one and my youngest one. And them were the
Yeah.
two who battles the most. About whose dad I am.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, it's just for myself and my wife included. It is bringing us closer to the family. Like my wife said, she wouldn't know what she would do, if I was gone. And so it really just make us think about spending time. Like I'm doing everything within my power to stop working as much, because I'm a person who worked like 3-4 jobs as well as full-time pastor at church. But I'm just really stopping a lot of things and really just thinking about the importance of spending more time with my family.
Yeah. Hey, it's not every day that you get to hear content like this, but every time it comes out, you can be a part of it. If you click the subscribe button, you will be the first to know when we put out new content. And if you like it, it'll help this content go all over the world and bless lots of people. And if you share it, you can bless someone that you know, I don't know, friend, family member, maybe even your pastor or your faith leader. And so we want to change the culture. Help us be a part of it. Part of the challenge of a pastor is, especially in situations where we're working, and we're also working in ministry, right? That bivocational, trivocational, and then there's these values that we want to we want to kind of live up to,
Mhm.
and then there's also this ministry that we're involved in and we're leading. And so, you know, tell me about the challenge that you face with helping your values line up with ministry and what that challenge is like.
It's really a hard challenge, and you never really have enough time for no one. I get the side where my children want more time, and deservingly right, because I got three kids in high school right now, and that's the
Mm,
time where they really need me to pour in. But then you have your congregation who also needs you and need time. And I'm praying to God that things can change within my life, so I can be full time ministry, so I can give more time to both sides. I have a job that pulls a lot of my time because I still have to provide for my family. And so therefore, and I never wanted to live off the church, and I just got other things in the makings right now that sooner or later they can run themselves and I don't have to be hands on nor continue to have to work the job. That I can give the time of ministry, the time ministry needs, and give my family the time that they need. Because it's important. Your family, as a pastor, your family needs you too. And you
yeah.
have to give them that time.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, back to the video for just a second. I know you the picture, right? Deacon Clarence takes him down. You slide around at an angle, and once you see that it's safe, I saw that you kind of push the gun away, and then you grabbed onto him and kind of held him down and wrestled him down, and then you spoke to him, and you started sharing with him, and you started talking about between that moment and when he was outside with the cops, you started talking about forgiveness. Tell me about what you were sharing with this young man who tried to take your life.
Um, the main thing I wanted him to know is that I forgave him. When I talked with him and I seen, where he was at, and I just wanted to let him know I forgave him, and I wanted to let him know, I love him, and I know sometimes with men, it's like you love them. Yeah, I learned to love people, and in spite of what he done, there's not a sin beyond God's redemption, and so it shouldn't be a sin that someone commit that's beyond us forgiving one another. And so I just wanted to let him know in the moment that I'm not upset. I'm not angry with him. I don't think it was something wise that he done, but at the same token, I understand. And my whole aspect was I hope that he can get the help that he need. Even in that moment, I was caring more about him at that point because everything else was secure. The church was secure. The people were secure. So at that point, I just wanted to make sure he was okay.
Yeah, forgiveness. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's a forgiveness can be challenging. I mean, you know, a lot of us struggle with forgiveness. A lot of us struggle with forgiveness. But you know, I hear in your story, and just kind of to go back to some of your history, forgiveness has kind of been a thread in your story. Um, I saw in one interview you said you grew up in the hood.
Absolutely.
Tell me about your hood. Where does
I
that
mean,
story start?
like for me, the hood started with my own household, and what I mean by that is, you had six boys growing up, six boys, one girl. She's the youngest. I'm the youngest boy, so I got,
Wow.
I got five brothers older than me, and so I had a lot of learning experiences from them, just being around them, and just everything that they did, they took me with them, and so I had a chance to learn stuff that I should not learn at such a young age, but it is what it is. That my dad passed away. My mom did her best, and I love my mom, and I'm so grateful for her trying to do her best. But we still grew up the way we grew up, and
Yeah.
so I was always running the streets, and as I got older, I fell into the drug game, and I didn't ask for the drug game, to be honest with you. I was actually an A student inside school. I was an athlete. And I got stuck one time to where I owed some, if my rent was coming up, I only got $200 on me. And I didn't know
Mm,
what to do. I'm age of 17. I'm living with me and my brother. We're living on our own, and I had to pay my part of the rent. It was just me and my one brother at the time. And
gotcha.
if I paid my rent, that was all the money I had. And one of my friends who thought he was being a friend to me, he came to me and he said, "Hey, I know a way we can make some money and you can double that." And I listened to him. I didn't make no money at first. Later on, long story short, I started making money. And instead of me stopping, I was making so much money, I just kept going. And
Yeah.
so at that point, I became a drug dealer and I started doing things that drug dealers do. And I started taking on the drug dealer mentality and the street mentality. to where, I really lived that life, and I put a lot of people in harm's way as well as myself. And so at that point, when I went to prison and I had a chance to, come to the Lord and come to my sound mind, I understand how much God forgave me of and what God done for me. And so I just wanted to be instrumental in helping other people. And so the same love and care that God showed me, I try to show to other people. And so it's not that hard for me to forgive when you know what you done and you know the things that you done. And so, and when true forgiveness and you're open to true forgiveness, and God doesn't, he held nothing against me. He actually
Yeah,
accepted me for who I was, where I was, and he healed me. And so now I'm just hoping the same thing for this young man.
I hear you. So you were forgiven from a place of I've been forgiven. It's kind of
Correct.
where it was coming from. Yeah, I want to go there, but before there, I want to talk about Lawrenceville, right? You grew up in Lawrenceville.
No, I grew up. I grew up. I grew up on the north side, but even
Uh,
growing up on the north side, I actually really grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. Because
got you. That was
I, I
15.
left. Yes, I left when I was 14, and I moved to Phoenix, Arizona, and with my
Got you.
brother.
Okay.
I moved out there with my brother.
Yeah. And now before that, there was Vidalia, Georgia, at the Boys Club, right?
Yes, I was doing bad in school after my dad died, and I started kind of, my brothers all left the house. Everybody was older than me. I was the youngest, and they left the house, and it was just me and my sister was there, and I just started running the streets, and my mom seen I was going a bad direction. At the time, a football player by the name of Mel Blunt, who played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, he
Steelers, yeah.
lived out in the suburbs, and his daughter and my sister were best friends. And so he couldn't come and get his daughter from school, and she went to school 5 minutes from my house. And so he asked my mother, can she watch him until he get off football practice, or can she watch her till he get off football practice, and then he would come and pick his daughter up. But then when he heard I was doing bad in school, he told my mom about his boys' home in Vidalia, Georgia, and they talked about it, and they convinced me to go down there, and that's where I spent a year, and it really helped me, and I'm so grateful for it. It really helped me get back my focus. But after I left there, it ain't take long for me to lose focus.
Yeah. Now, so you were in Georgia, hung out there for a little while, but you also grew up in the church, right? Am I getting that right?
Well, my mom had us in the church. My mom, she is the church. Amen. She done so much, and she worked in the church all her life of just being there, doing events, supporting the church, teaching Bible study, whatever she can do, she helped out. And so she kept my family in church. And even when it was just me and my sister home, it was a requirement that every Sunday we didn't have to stay for the message, but she made us go to Sunday school. And so I was in the church, growing up, she kept us in the church. But at one point when I was 6, that's when all my brothers were home and my dad was still living, and we were all in the church. My dad wasn't with us, but me and all my brothers and my sister was in the church. And that's when there was a visitor there who didn't know my family, and he called us up front. And that's where it was. He Everybody thought he was going to say it was my brother who was going to be a man of God. Cause my brother at the time, he was like 14, 15, and he was
Hmm.
actually already ordained minister preaching in the church. And so when the visitor called us up, he was saying one of your sons is going to be a man of God. And everybody thought he was going to go to my brother who was already instrumental in the church. But he said it was me. And he said, I had a calling on my life. And my mom never let me forget that calling.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Thank God for moms, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, man, wow. So you're having this moment in church, and sounds like you didn't always want to be at church. Is that a fair statement?
I'm sorry.
You didn't always want to be at church. Is that a fair statement back then?
That's a true, excellent statement, worthy of all truth.
Yeah, I could identify. I remember that's old school church, right? I remember getting called up to the front and long prayers. You have to stand up for the long prayer, and I'm like, I'm just trying to stay awake standing up, for this 12-minute, 15-minute prayer and prophesying and laying hands when the evangelist comes. Yeah, that's old school church right there. That's
Absolutely.
old school. Yeah. So you're not wanting to participate in church much, but you're there. You're
Correct.
going. Then you go from there and you go out to Georgia, and then you end up in Arizona. So tell me, how did you get to Arizona from Pittsburgh?
One of my brothers actually went to Arizona first. and he went down there and he got himself established. After he got himself established, we just migrated down there one at a time. All the rest of my family, even my younger sister, she actually moved down there. And most of my family, all of them besides me and my brother, are all out west. Just me and one of my brothers, the one who was the minister at the age of 14, just me and him are back here, and he's helping me with the church now.
Got you. So tell me about your journey in Arizona, because that sounds like an interesting time in your life, and really a time where you were forming a lot.
You know, I was hurt by the school system, believe it or not. And what happened was that I was an athlete, a true athlete. You know, I played basketball, football, baseball, and I wrestled. You know, and I ran long distance. I was a true athlete. And what happened was when I got everything together in Georgia, and I was playing sports in Georgia. When I moved to Arizona, you know, it was just I had a great welcoming. The principal of the school asked me to play for the basketball team because my gym coach brought my gym coach brought down there in Arizona for gym. You did everything. Y'all had like 2 weeks of football, 2 weeks of basketball, 2 weeks of baseball,
Mm,
2 weeks of track. They just did everything in 2 week segments. And every time he would bring the coach of every of the football. He was the coach of the football, but he would bring the coach of the basketball. He would tell him about. I watched him play basketball in gym. Then he'd tell the coach of wrestling, "Hey, you don't believe how we got the state champion." He just dogged him. You know, all these things. And every one he would actually go and tell him that you got to get this kid. In Georgia, they made me sit out a year. They told me I couldn't play until that
mm,
year was over, even though I was, coming from a whole different state. But at the
yeah.
time, they wrote letters, but I was not allowed to play nothing. And so my next year, I just, I set out and I just lost. I didn't lose interest. That's when drugs caught me. And once the drugs caught up to me, it was like, forget school.
Yeah, and that was what, the '80s, right?
Yeah, it was the
That
80s,
was it.
correct.
Yeah, '80s. I was there. I was there. That was the crack. Those were the crack days when crack first hit the streets in the '80s.
We all wanted to be Nino Brown, Scarface.
Man, listen, everybody wanted a little cash back then, you know. So yeah, yes, because you're out there kind of living with your brother in Arizona. You're and I just doing my research. He bought you a car.
Yeah, my
Is
brother.
it?
Well, it was my like when I first went out there. My one brother who was older than me. He the one who brought me a car. And then after that, I went back to Pittsburgh, and then I came back again for the next school year, and that's where I lost focus. But yes, he
Mhm.
brought me a car, so I'm basically out there with two of my brothers who, just one's 3 years older than me, and the other one is like 9 years older than me. And so, it was a do whatever you want to do. And, we were mature, and I'm not talking about this generation at all, but, we grew up being having to handle things faster because the predicaments that we were in than with this generation today. We more so nourish our children a little longer. In the past, you're just thrown right inside the fire and you gotta fend for yourself. And so it was like, man, you've been running the streets since you've been a baby, so they didn't baby me when I came out there, even though I was only 15 years old. And now I got my own car, and we all live together in an apartment. And it was just, fend for yourself. And, I did well the first year, but the second year after I left my one brother, and it was me and my other brother who was down there, and he was even more wilder. It was like if you get up and go to school, you get up. That's on you. You want to be dumb, be dumb. But I just didn't have that leadership that I needed. You know, and it really hurt me because I had an opportunity. The thing was, like you say, back in the '80s, and I won't keep talking long, but in the '80s, it was, we were just really, we didn't know we were just leaving the Martin Luther King years at the time, but you know what I'm saying? Not having,
Yeah.
and, being a low income family, now I'm like, it's like 88 and I'm like 18 years old, 19 years old. I'm making $40,000 a month selling drugs. I mean, back in the '80s, I had this type of money, and so it was like,
I
it
mean,
was
that's a
too
lot
hard.
of money for now. Yeah.
It was too hard for me to see, see why would I keep going to school when I'm making $40,000 a month selling, I mean, a month selling drugs. And it was just easy for me. God had given me a gift and I used my gift incorrectly, but I really understand business. I'm really quick wit. I can understand things. I catch on fast, And I went from being on the corner, buying from the guys on the corner, to selling to everybody on the corner. And so it was just so easy for me. And I made a poor choice, but at the same token, just having that type of money at that type of age, what type of choice you think I'm going to make?
I hear you. $40,000 a month. I mean, there's a lot of people who make $40,000 a year. I think the average income last time I looked was 57,000 a year. So you've made it, and we're talking about the 80s. So that was you were making more than a yearly salary every month. So yeah, I mean, I hear you. Why go to school, right? School or money, school or money, and that was that sounds very, anybody who was around in the 80s, early 90s, this is going to make complete sense, right? Because we were feral at that time, right? It was just a different time, and you were trying to survive out there. I know when I look back, you talked about 23rd Indian School Road. Tell me about 23rd School Indian Road, the impact it had on you, and the impact you had on it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it ain't had too much an impact on me as much as I had an impact on it. That was the
Yeah.
place where I actually first started selling drugs. And these are things that I don't glory in, or not. To this day, I'm ashamed of it, because it makes me even strive harder to do more things in my community today, because I understand. I devastated that community. I started selling drugs in that area, and that area now is a terrible area for Phoenix. And it wasn't terrible when I moved down there. But once I
Yeah.
started selling drugs, it brought traffic in that area, and now others continued on. It's been 30 years, since I've been down there doing anything, but I know how it started. I know what was the start of it. I know the area before I lived in there, I know the traffic that was brought that way when I was living there at the time,
Yeah.
and so, like I say, these are things that I don't glory in anything like that at all. But these are things that I recognize that I pay a contribution to, and and now therefore I want to play an even greater part in helping the community that I'm in today. You know.
Yeah. I think it's worth mentioning. Everybody has a past. Everybody has a story, and that's what we're talking about here under the juniper tree. It's about sharing your story about how you got to where you are today, and how your story has impacted who you are today. Because even in that, I hear the forgiveness that was given to you, still that thread, right? That forgiveness that was given to you, you're able to pass it on. You talked about Nino Brown, and I mean, we were all impacted by that story in some way, shape, form, or fashion back then. And there, you mentioned before, not today, but in a previous conversation, you had this feeling of being a little untouchable back then, a little untouchable. Where did that come from, and how did that impact you?
Well, it came from me being comfortable selling drugs, and then we um can of we say can of worms is being open. They're being open. The truth of the matter is that one thing I learned, that in life, once you do something, it becomes more easier to do it a second time. And
Mm,
so once I started being in the drug game, and once I started doing what I was doing, like, instead of me saying, wow, you almost lost your life on what you done, and I came through it. Then I got praised by people without understanding at the time. People, my friends who we growing up on the streets, and we run in the streets, and now they like, man, you the man, you done this, you done that. It ain't make me think like, man, you almost lost your life. It made me think like, man, I'm gonna do something even greater next time, and it would just continue to embolden me until the fact that I got so emboldened till I became bold, where I thought that nothing can ever happen to me. I'm always be on top, and until my world got busted today when I was on the bus and I got caught with the cocaine, transporting it back to Pittsburgh.
wow. And so once you're caught, what happens in your story after that?
You know, the best thing that I learned, and I'm grateful for me, because prison was a place that was a safe haven for me. I was
Mm,
soon, I believe, truly I believe, because I was in so much trouble, and you wouldn't believe the trouble I was in. I wasn't just on the run from the police. I was, I had beef on every side of town in Phoenix. I couldn't go out nowhere because, I was beefing with everybody. And so I had to leave. And my probation officer, even when I was leaving, my probation officer told me, just go, just leave. Your paperwork will follow you. Don't even worry about it. It's crazy. They
Yeah.
don't do that type of stuff, but that's just the type of life I was living. And so I almost forgot the question, but um, it just when I got to prison, there we go. When I got to prison, it just gave me a chance for life to slow down for me. For me
Mm.
actually to, start thinking this is not who you are. This is not who you should be. God has blessed me and given me gifts. And I was just using the gifts that God had given me for the enemy's camp. But now that I'm in the Lord, I'm using my gifts for the building of the kingdom of God. But prison gave me a chance for life to slow down for me and for me to come to my senses. And then when I heard about, when I started understanding more about God, and no offense to the church today, but the churches we grew up in the past, it wasn't the real church that God would want us to have. And what I mean
Mm.
by that is it wasn't a place of real learning. It was just church. You go there, the pastor's hooping and hollering. It don't even matter if you hear what he's saying. Everybody's just dancing. You know what I'm saying? There's really no education going forth to the things of God where one can really learn the things of God, learn the ways of God. It's just emotional driven. But that was
Yeah.
what we grew up in. And now today, for me, having a chance to be in prison, studying the Word of God diligently. Actually, for like my last 7 years, 11 years, I studied really hard. But like my last 7 years, I actually studied 7 hours every day, 7 hours every day for 7 years, and 7, 8 hours every day, and teach 3 Bible studies every day for 7 years. And so, just to have the opportunity to be diligent in the Word of God, learning the Word of God, learning the things of God, fasting, praying, stand before God, and I start, it just was, it was just amazing, God speaking to me, God giving me understanding, God helping me. It was just amazing to see like my life, how it was in prison, where I'm in prison living like, God is blessing me, prospering me. Things would happen to me in prison that you wouldn't believe. Like there was one time I was about to transfer from one prison to another, and a CO came to me and said, "I ain't never did this for nobody. I don't know why I'm doing it, but I'm going to call down to the next prison you're going to, and I'm gonna have them give you the same job you got here. I'm gonna have them give it to you there." I mean,
Mm.
why do they even care? One CO just came to me and was like, "What are you in here for? I can't even believe you're in here." I mean, they were just, always giving me praise, of just the way I conducted myself in prison. But I was just living the new me that God was teaching me, and the Word of God was just flowing through me, and you could just see God's presence on my life, even in prison. I was locked up in prison, but I was definitely free.
Yeah. It really sounds like as you share your story, you were in this like really rough place, and God almost put you away
Yes,
and kind of kept you, and you saw God's hand even in even in those moments in prison. Um, and you were growing. You were growing spiritually, right? Spiritual
correct,
formation, as we call it today, right? Spiritual formations, sanctification was happening in
correct.
those moments in prison. Um, Even when you were being transferred, and you saw the favor of God and the hand of God all over your life, even as you were put away in this little box, and being saved for a for a later date.
For a later time. Yes, and at the same
Yeah.
time, he was mending me and molding me for what is to come. And like in my 3rd year, I won't lie to you, I thought that I was ready, and I went to God and I prayed, God, let me go home. And this is the vision I always tell, and I'll never forget it. The Lord spoke to me, and He said, if you really want to help the church, you got all the heads of the household right here. And that's
Mm.
when I turned it up a level, where I'm like, okay, Lord, I get it. If I really want to help, I got all the heads in the house right here. And I just start shepherding and pastoring and teaching men to be men, teaching them how to be men of God in prison. And so, a lot of times we come to the Lord, but it's always what we want. I want to go to the Lord and I want to do this, I want to do that. But a true servant listens to his master. And so at the time, God showed me that, if you're going to be useful for me, you can be useful right where you are. And I just
Mm.
went to work. And even being here, people come to church and they be like, "Man, it's amazing. You don't have a lot of people, but when you teach and preach, you preach like it's a lot." I give my all regardless of how many people's in front of me. I prepare the same way, whether 10 people is in front of me or 10,000. I prepare the same way. I give my all to God in everything I do.
All in, all in
All
is what I'm hearing. All in,
absolutely.
either way, no matter where you. No, but there was a time when you were like God, I'm all in, which means can I get out? Until he shifted it for
Yes,
you.
yeah, but
Yeah.
my thing was after I had come to repentance. I wasn't just like I came to the Lord really just to get out of prison. After I came to repentance, I really understood I'm no threat to no one no more. You know, all
Yeah.
that worldly life is out of me. At this point, I felt it was no more need for me to be in prison because there could not be no greater change come. But what it was a excellent breeding ground for me to grow spiritually. In there, I had more challenges in prison coming to the world and being a pastor in the free world, man, this is a walk to the park. This is a piece of cake. I mean, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
I preach, a couple Bible studies, teach a couple Bible studies, and preach. The Bible studies I teach and the preaching I do, I would do that every day. And want the stuff I do in a week in the world, I did in one day in prison. You understand
Wow.
what I'm saying? So everything for me in prison was a lot better. I didn't have the distractions of my children, my wife, nothing. I was just totally focused, give myself unto the Lord. My study time was enhanced. The people around me was a lot more study in the word. You have different religions in there. You have every religion in there. Muslims, Islam. I mean, you have it all. Buddhists, Hindu. You have every aspect of religion. And the thing is, it's not like in the world. In the world, if I don't want to be around Muslim, I just stay in my house. In there was no staying away from it. You go to lunch, you're going to get challenged by what you believe. Nation of Islam, it was so many different religious sects in prison, and they all come in and they're all learned. They all understand, even the different denominations in Christianity. Everyone's there. Everyone's challenging you. They're all learned, and so you have to be ready. I can come here and teach a Bible study, and I ain't need to read the Bible. Not that I do that, but I don't have to read the Bible in a whole year, and I can still be farther along than anybody or meeting, on the streets. And there, if I tried to miss a day of studying, boy, oh boy, they hand it to you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're in there studying, they're perfecting their craft. They're in there without no distractions. And so it was a great breeding ground for me. And not only did I have to learn it, but also I had to live it. And every day, like once I preach here, I go home. Nobody see me but my wife. Half the time she gonna do her own thing. She ain't seeing me neither. You know what I'm saying? But in prison, there was no leaving. It was you're with your celly all the time. When you walk out, you got 100 people in your unit. When you walk out of your unit, you're dealing with 1,000 people every single day, constantly. You go in the TV room, you're dealing with people. It just don't stop.
It's like a city unto itself with
Yes,
all kinds of people from all different places, all walks of life, and everybody's squished in together, and you have to deal with everybody. And so it sounds like your metamorphosis came, your transformation came on the inside of that small city where everybody was squished together, so that it prepared you for the ministry that you're doing right now at Jesus Dwelling.
correct. And the funny part about it, and this was funny to me because I grew up in the United States. But remember, I wasn't in a state prison. I did federal time. So
Mm,
I'm dealing with everybody from Colombia, Haiti. I mean, they all are in there. It's not like you're just dealing with people from your state. No, I did federal time. So I'm dealing with people from all different walks of life. And this was like the greatest eye opener for me. Is one
yeah.
time, it was two guys who were arguing about what color Jesus is, whether Jesus is black or whether he's white. And then a Chinese guy came in and he started arguing that Jesus was Chinese. Now to us, that's funny. You know what I'm saying? But to him,
Yeah.
it wasn't because he had Bible and verses to support his argument. And so you understand what I'm saying?
I
That's
do.
when it was just like, oh, this. It was like this is a whole new lease on life, But you
Yeah.
start understanding, everybody has an argument, everybody has a reason for why they believe what they believe, and nobody's coming ignorantly. They all come and study.
Yeah. I know you have a lot going on right now, and I want to respect your time, but I would love for you to come back and talk about uh, federal prison apologetics. I think that would be a phenomenal conversation, just to talk through what that looks like, to give people a picture, like a realistic picture of what it's like on the inside, and what it's like, what ministry is like in that microcosm. I think that would be a great conversation we could have, you
Oh,
know?
we have mercy on people who come in, but we be like, please stop sending people in here who just doing their first trial sermon, or on the street, they're like, well, we're going to take you in prison and you're going to do your first trial sermon, your first trial sermon on inmates. You know what I'm saying? And it's
Hmm.
like, are you kidding me? Y'all need to sit down and let us teach y'all. You know what I'm saying? Because they're coming in and they don't know about us, so they're making us ignorant because they don't know what we do in prison. You understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Where and this is no lie, and I'm rusty right now. I really am. But when I came home and while I was in there, I wasn't as rusty as I am. But I'm still really good right now. People will tell you. And I
Yeah.
don't do it like I don't have a good memory. Like you can ask me a question, I'll tell you I forgot the question a second ago. But I had read the Bible so much in prison, and this is the truth. You can give me if you gave me 2 verses in the Old Testament. If you read them, I can tell you chapter and verse where you are. If you give
Mm.
me 5 words in the New Testament, I can tell you chapter and verse where you are. In other words, I read the Bible so much that I didn't. We're taught the Bible like scriptures. That's not how the Bible was written. The Bible, first of all, wasn't even chapters of scriptures in the Bible. First of all,
Yeah.
it's a letter, and just like you go to a movie, you don't start in the middle of a movie and try to figure it out. You understand the movie from the beginning to the end. Well, when you read the Bible, you got to read these as it's an epistle, so you got to read it like a letter. And then when you understand the story, you'll understand where everything is. Like if you're talking about, something that you'll be like, he said this. Well, yeah, he said that at the beginning of the story. So that's when David did this, doing this. I mean, you'll be able to understand everything. But that's how I learned the Bible. You understand
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And I read it so many times that it was just embedded in me. And that's how I am now. Like when you see me preaching, I don't preach from notes. I don't teach from notes. That's why you can stop me and ask me questions and I can explain to you. But that's how I learned the Bible.
Wow. I feel like I already have the name of our next conversation together. It's hermeneutics and apologetics, the prison story. Like I could completely see that. I would love to expose people to what it's like in that time. But yeah, speaking of time, I want to be mindful of yours. Tell me about, so you've done that time, you've left, you're in ministry now. I want to say full time, but really tri-vocational, right? That's the reality. Yeah. So how did you go from getting out to pastoring the church that you're at now?
Well, once again, for the call of the Lord on my life, He's always been preparing me. And for myself, yeah, like when you ask me like a question, like what was going through your mind at the time, and things just happen, and you just react. Well, when I came home from prison, I was just reacting. God had prepared me, He trained me, and it's just amazing. Of when I came home, all I had was a GED in the Bible. That was it. But God had prepared me and He taught me the jobs that I had in prison. Them were jobs that you can do on the street, and the only thing that we're not being told and taught. Like I like to go back in prisons and prepare the guys. I'll be like, look, if you learn how to fix a toilet in prison, when you get to the street, you can fix a toilet. The only thing is you did it in prison. But the same toilet that you have here in prison, that's what we use on the streets. So you can have a trade if you just start learning these things while you're in prison. But nobody's telling the guys this. So then when they come home, they're not really prepared that much. You understand what I'm saying? But the
Yeah.
preparation God has shown me, I've been prepping you all the time. All the little jobs you was having there, now all you do is you just write on your application. You don't have to put that you've been in prison and all them things. Just show that you can do the job and show them that you're able to do what they're asking you to do. And I came home, was able to get a job driving a forklift. Then I've been in administration in prison, so then I got an administrative job, and it just kept wheelbarrow. I mean, the door just kept opening and opening and open. But God was prepping me the whole time, and I didn't know He was prepping me, but He had me more than prepared. And even coming home, going from being a pastor, everything fell in my lap. The church fell in my lap. The door opened. Everything just happened, and I just continue to just react to where God has me at, doing what
Yeah.
He would want me to do. Just always praying. God, I just pray today You be glorified, and everything I do be glorified.
That's so interesting because kind of to bring us full circle, your life has really been preparation, reacting. Not necessarily always formal training, but still preparation. Even in the moment when the gunman came and he pointed that gun at you, um, preparation, and you just reacted, but you had already been prepared for the moment by your time in the streets and the beef that you had and those situations that other people didn't necessarily know the details about, is what I
Right.
hear. Yeah.
And the funny part is, you're bringing it out right now, but about a year ago, we made shirts inside our church, and the shirt is prepping to be prepared, and that's the
Mm,
name of our shirts that we have. It's already made. We made it part of our ministry. We call it prepping to be prepared, and it's like, when you deal with food, you prep the food so you can be prepared. And we be
yeah.
like, that's what we do in church. We prep ourselves so we can be prepared. But that's on
Mm.
our shirts that have prepping to be prepared.
That's awesome. I love it. Pastor Glenn, I love your story. I love everything that God has um, done in on the inside of you, and how he's prepared you for even this moment. I know that you have a lot going on right now. Tell everybody who's going to listen to this, what would you tell, not Pastor Glenn, what would you tell young Glenn, uh, if you were to go back to those late 80s, early 90s? What would you tell that young man about his life story?
If I had a chance to go back in time and meet myself,
Yeah.
I would actually tell myself, you have greatness within you, but that greatness can be wasted if you don't listen.
Yeah.
I think the young people need to know that they have greatness within them, and a lot of time, a lot of strength is wasted on youth, you know, and
Yeah.
a lot of time we don't come into wisdom until we lose strength. But for
That's
young
good.
people, if you can actually, you know, be mentored, be willing to be mentored, grow from other people's wisdom. Let them mentor you. Let them help you, because your gifts can be wasted. I wasted my gifts, and it's not too late for me. I can still do things, but I wasted a lot of my gifts because of the simple fact that I didn't have that mentor. And you know, I don't know if I can blame myself, because I was also one who was open to being mentored. But the truth of the matter is that it's important to be willing to accept being mentored, that you don't waste
Yeah.
your greatness.
Indeed. Indeed. Well, tell us as you move forward, what do you have going on next? What's next for Pastor Glenn and for the ministry there?
For me, what's next is, be honest with you, I've been waiting for this opportunity. As much as I don't want to put it like I've been waiting, because I've been waiting to have the opportunity for people to know God differently.
Mm,
And my only desire is to not to lift myself up, but to glorify God. And I want people to know God differently. When I was in prison, I was so angry with the church when I first came to the Lord, because I'm like, all the time this was hit. I felt like the church was hiding who God was from me because of what the church showed. Like you said, when I was growing up, I did not want to be in church. I did not want to be around church. I didn't care about church. You know what I'm saying? If I'm going to dance, I'd rather dance to some different music, if you know what I
yeah.
mean, instead
Yeah.
of just the hooping and hollering, and that. But now, when I had a chance to really read the Word of God and learn and see what God is trying to express, it just, man, I really want, for me, what's next, I just want to let the world see God and let them
Mm,
see Him. And like you say, your first question, I thought you was going to frame it a little differently, and I started to answer. You know, for myself, life is God. It's not about being a pastor. It's not about being, a prophet, evangelist, apostle. It's not about them things, having titles. I came to the Lord and I seen how real He was. And I follow God because I understand how real and true He is. And so everything I do is not because I'm scared, or because, I'm just trying to check off my religious aspect. I've seen that living for God is the truth, and there's
mm,
nothing like it. And
yeah.
all God has for you, He just wants you to have the best life. And when I caught hold to that, for me, it's a no-brainer. Y'all can keep doing what y'all doing, but I'm not doing that. I'm serving the Lord because I recognize just how good He is.
I hear you. I hear that. I hear that. Well, Pastor Glenn, it is a pleasure and an honor to talk to you and just, have this time where we can talk through your story, share your story, and get it out to more people who can, who may be in similar situations, who may be in a church where God has been preparing them, but they don't understand for what. But hopefully, seeing your story, they can know that God still has them in mind. God still is thinking about them, and God still has a plan for them. So thank you for your story of hope. Thank you for the ministry that you do. For the Deacon Clarence, who is a hero, who's a hero among heroes. 63 jumped over it. Man, I tell you, that thing still sticks with me. That thing still sticks with me. He's invited to the cookout. You're invited to the cookout. And so we're thankful that you all are doing the work that you're doing up there in Philadelphia. Up there, just doing great work. Excuse me, up in Pittsburgh there on the north side. So thank you for just being part of this. Just thank you for your time. I thank you. I really appreciate it. And God bless your ministry as well. We all have our gifts, and this is an outlet that I would never have. So I really appreciate you and doing what God has you to do. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Hey, there is a ridiculous amount of content out there that you can look at and watch and subscribe to, but not everything is going to edify and not everything is going to help you and not everything is going to be interesting. That's what we're trying to provide here. But the only way we can do it is if people like you click the little button, share, give it to a friend. It's free, and subscribe. That content is free too. It's free to subscribe. So let's do that, so we can have more great conversations with people that you want to hear from. Take care. Look forward to seeing you on the B-side.